Review Committee meeting, February 8th, 2024. Roll call. Dan Ormsby.
Here.
Mark Eastman.
Here.
Paul Gobbin. Here. Item number 3, town-owned property use policy, continued. Sue has done some writing.
I sent you out today something to shoot at, is the best way I can phrase it, because what I tried to do was incorporate the wide variety of viewpoints on usage in a way that gave everybody something and nobody everything. That felt the fairest way to do it, but as I said, it's something for you to look at. There was a discussion at the last meeting about the council thinking other areas of the community or other places in the community should be the location for some of these events. Our current festival or regulations allow the council to do that if you choose. If someone applies for an event, you have the right to say here but not there. Already, that's in the festival stuff. So I didn't touch that location item. If you use some form of this, it would be incorporated into that licensing process. And as I said, I was trying to thread a needle that's given the diverse opinions on this council about how this should happen. It was somewhat challenging, but
I'd say very, but okay.
Somewhat.
But anyway, certainly the idea of limiting the number of recurring same things that can happen, that can be licensed by any entity, both for-profit or non-profit, because in discussions, once you get beyond doing something a couple of times, it's no longer an event. It's a business operation. And we have an email from the dairy port that talks about concerns about that kind of competition with people who have no bricks and mortar investment in town. And the other concern was that allowing for-profits to do something that generated was not what some were interested in, and so that is why the requirement would be that for-profits can do it, but not on a for-profit basis. That would be the way it worked, and that the application would need to be more specific in terms of fees that were being charged and what event attendees would be charged for, and this is whether it's for-profit or non-profit. That's in general. It does eliminate alcohol from being served or sold on town-owned property, and that's across the board. Events held on town property are open to people of all ages, and that includes children. And at least the consensus from the council at the last meeting was that alcohol was off the table. So that's included. But as I said, it's at least something in writing for you to say, I hate that, take it out, I add that in, do something, change it. But I think if you read through it, you recognize that all of these things were discussed in some way, shape, or form last time as views of members different members of the council, so. That's it.
I read through it at work. Thanks for sending it to me. I agree. I guess last week, I don't want you guys to think I wasn't a proponent of people running their business on town-owned property. That's not what I meant. But, you know, we do need something sometimes to get people to turn that corner, on days that nothing's open in town, or, you know, so I'm very big on that, but, I think it's a fair compromise.
I would agree.
I think it's a fair compromise.
Mr. Chair, I just have one thing that I wanted to ask the committee to consider is, where it says that, promoting any political party,
Mm-hmm.
or I would just like leave that language, but also perhaps add something along the lines of any political candidate, just to tighten that up.
Yeah. No, I,
Oh.
Promoting any political party or candidate.
Yeah.
Or
that would be
candidate,
totally
yeah.
fine with that. Yep,
yep, no,
It sounds reasonable,
I agree.
because they may not be in a party.
that's right.
Right.
Yep.
The way things are going right now, who knows if we're gonna have it. So.
I'm gonna have a heart attack, that's
Yeah.
all right.
No, I
apologize.
agree with
That's
that.
all right.
I'm putting it in my pocket.
I'm old,
now.
I could die.
I forgot it was right behind you. Yeah.
Yep. No, I mean, I'm,
No, obviously, I missed the first half of this committee meeting last, 2 weeks ago. But I did watch it, and I think, I'll say this for this policy, I don't know how the committee feels, but I think it encompass, or at least takes into account in a fairly good way, everything that was discussed.
Yeah, good work, Sue.
yeah, no, you did great. I forgot to send anything. I was like, oh, shoot.
Now, if we want to do, like Paul had mentioned at the last meeting, those food trucks down by the Veterans Memorial, we need to change that.
That's correct.
We need to change that ordinance as well.
That's
Yeah.
correct. But the festival licensing also refers to alcohol in it. That would need to be eliminated, and then this
Right.
language incorporated into that festival permitting. Rich, is that an ordinance or policy or it's part of the, it's an ordinance, that it would be incorporated into that ordinance. I don't think we need, everything needs to be in one place when people look for what the rules are. I think if we put this outside of that, that's, because festivals and events are really what we permit. And anything that turns into long-term, this eliminates anything happening every week. And I will tell you that some business did not like hearing that nothing is open in Bucksport on Mondays, when we do have entities that have been open on Mondays during this time. Just as a,
That's true, that statement.
I hear-
That statement came from me, and there are, a better statement would have been half of our restaurants are closed, not all of them. So that was my fault.
I didn't accredit it with anyone, I just explained that the
Way to go.
overall thought was that fewer were open on
Yes.
Monday than, but you'll notice that there's no reference to days in this proposal.
Right.
Because if you limit the number of recurring events, it doesn't matter what day you choose to have them. You can do them on Fridays or Saturdays or Tuesdays or whatever is. I don't think that, I did not include that as a caveat, because if you limit the number of times, I don't think you should limit the days on which it can occur.
No, if, question, Councilor Rankin brought up the ordinance. So if it was changed in the ordinance to allow food trucks down on the waterfront from time to time, just not outlaw them, other than events.
The town would have to
Could-
determine how it wanted to, how many spaces it wanted to allow for what
And
amount of
what- we could,
time.
but we could restrict that, how many, what days of the week, maybe what time, we could actually have that in the ordinance, correct?
If the town chose to allow food trucks on public property,
Mhm.
you would need to determine how many, how often, and at what rate, and that rate needs to be sufficient to not make it a competitive disadvantage for somebody on Main Street. I think-
And I didn't
mean,
mean
we
anything
have-
by long term, I'm just
I have
saying.
accumulated information on what other areas charge, you know, from per day to per season to per month
Okay.
for those kind of things, if the town chooses to do that. But I think that if food trucks in a non-festival, non-event
Mhm.
related thing are something the council wants to consider, that it is something that the town does, that's not outside. That's a town income, town
Mhm.
licensed thing, not anybody else. Events and festival, that's one thing, but if the town decided you want to allow a food truck space at the Veterans Memorial after you changed it, and you had a space like Ellsworth does, down near their marina, one that's licensed, it's $400 a month, that's where they are, that's where they stay.
Mhm.
If you wanna do that, that's how we do that.
Okay.
That there is no middleman with that one. The events thing, every event that wants to hold something and have food trucks, that's different. They're putting it through their program, but if you are gonna put a spot that's gonna have one for any length of time, that is a different license than this.
Perfect.
Is that,
Yep, that's exactly what I was wondering. Nope, you answered everything, actually, more than what I wanted. Yep. Perfect.
How do you guys feel like the two, can we talk about that number more than twice in any calendar year? Do we think that the two is like a number that is adequate?
I think it could come up a little.
Yeah, my thought is like if somebody wanted to do a couple things in the spring and a couple things in the fall, or, you know, one per season, or, you know, something like that, then,
One per month. I was thinking one, but I just,
Yes.
you would throw in seasons, and I'm like, I was trying to think of how long really our summer is, right? It's
it's like a week
you
and a
could
half.
do
sometimes a
could-
week and a
no
half.
more than four,
Four.
and no more than one per month.
We're no more than one per month, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
If you did no more than four with no more than one per month, that expands that for a recurring event without it being
Being every week.
that's.
I understand, I totally understand the every week thing and the, but yeah, I think, yeah, that gives a little more.
Sue, can I forget? And I may have misheard or misread, but that was also for nonprofit, correct?
That's correct.
So the farmer's market meets once a month, once a week throughout the summer.
Valid point.
But that's the designated space that we were also talking about.
But it's still town-owned space. It's not farmer market-owned space, it's town-owned space.
That's right.
And that's a festival?
It's an event.
It's
an
an
event.
event. They have to fill out a permit.
Do we make it different for nonprofits?
Well, is there, do you want to differentiate by what you're doing?
You
You
make
know,
an exception?
What's that?
You mean make an exception for that
Well, no,
category?
I mean, everything isn't, the farmer's market, I don't see as an event, the permit isn't a festival, it's a
Market.
Gather.
a market,
Right, it is a market,
Jason,
right.
let's mark.
Yeah.
but it's a nonprofit because we didn't allow the guy selling
Vegetables, correct.
down there, he had to go on private property,
Right.
which is, you know, anyone that wants to do some of these things, that does it on private properties, off our thing, we're not regulating those. So it doesn't mean nothing can ever happen, it means that
Right.
on town property that it,
I think there needs to be language for that, though, if we're gonna allow
the farmer's market.
farmer's market.
Grant-
Just add some language
Well,
to
you,
clarify.
you could grandfather the farmer's market.
Well, because they do a permit every year, so. But I think we could put language in that recognizes it as a market.
As a market, not a festival,
Or you could designate that space, right,
for the farmer's market.
For anything.
for anything.
We wanna,
You know I'm stuck on that, aren't you, Dan? You know I'm stuck on that.
But that's, you bring that up, and that space is different than any other space that the town owns down on Main Street.
It is.
It is.
by what, you mean less utilized?
Yes, well, less
Well,
utilized.
people park in it because when
People
the
park,
farmer's
right.
market sets up, they call and complain
Oh,
that
do
they've
they?
set up
Somebody-
early and
Someone
they
does.
can't get to park for the
Right. Everyone's gonna
Post office.
complain, but, well, it's not as desirable as, you know, down by the
Gazebo.
dock, and, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is a different, it's still Main Street, you know, but
Tell me what you think of that.
I really think we ought to do the farmer's market as a grandfather type thing, cause that's been happening forever.
Well, can we put language just to clarify that farmer's market is not considered an event?
Well, I mean, that's a.
That's an easy fix.
Yeah.
Because under for-profit businesses, D, festivals or events, if it isn't, if that clarification that that's under for-profit businesses isn't enough, then the words could be added under D.
The farmer's market isn't for profit.
Exactly. And
They're
so
a
we could just say
nonprofit.
for-profit.
They're a
then-
nonprofit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we add for-profit festivals or events held on the waterfront that are not conducted by, maybe that's not the best place to add it, I'm just saying that if we're gonna differentiate, there are a number of ways we
Could
can
we put
differentiate.
definitions, what is an event
Well, that's,
and what's not? It's probably
You
the
could-
easiest.
the easiest thing is to say that a farmer's market is not
Considered to be.
considered to be an event, and
Yeah.
That would solve it.
I think that would solve it. That-
Regarding the easements along the walkway, I think you had mentioned that we do have permission for a couple of the big events per year. We have that permission from all of them already.
that was part of that was happening when we knew that was a possibility when the thing was established. This policy covers town-owned property, not easements or leases, which limits events and festivals not operated by the town to only those areas owned by the town. And what that primarily allows is the Bay Festival to be the bigger
Right,
event.
so the walkway is
That's correct.
100% off limits unless it's a town-run event.
Right.
Where the easements are, yes. And in talking,
We could.
Michael's only concern, when I talked to him about the marina, was that he said the only one that really ever would impact him would be the Bay Festival, because that's the one that allows things to happen, but nothing else closes down his parking lot, so.
'Cause we need to keep that in mind too, because if we do get this dock expansion, that area is gonna be even busier, and shutting down is gonna be way more difficult.
If we get this dock, shutting down the town dock parking lot is gonna be really difficult.
And we can control that by
By making those changes. when we
right,
need to.
exactly,
Yeah.
on a permit basis for what we issue, yeah.
I know we're coming up on time, and I know that we've talked a little bit different on the number of days or recurrences. I just wanted to float a hypothetical, if you don't mind. if we get to a point where let's just say every weekend, there is a for-profit business having applied for an event, there could be an argument made that perhaps that's too much. Do we want to consider that now? Like, the most events that can happen in 1 month is X. I'm just throwing that out there. Because if every Saturday
Regardless
there's
of
an
the day.
event on the waterfront from 12 to 5, let's say, that could become a thing.
Even nonprofit or for.
Nonprofit, profit, yeah, I'm just,
You're gonna have, yeah, you're gonna have people that are renting those slips be mad too,
mhm.
right? Because I mean, yeah. That parking lot's not that big.
Or there's the parking lot across the street.
There is the parking lot across the street.
And here we go.
There's some that that's a great problem to have too, but I just,
Well, what
we
you could
need
do-
to be ahead of it.
What you could do too, though, is you could say, all right, we've already had so many here, you can utilize this town property.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
within
the
the rules. we already-
flexibility
within the
you
rules we have.
in your rules,
Yeah.
is to,
We can't let you use this, but we'll let you use
And
this.
we
This
can
is
do
a
that
compromise.
Case by case.
I was gonna
if we
say,
get to that
if it
point.
comes to the table,
Yeah, so I think,
yeah.
it's kinda in there.
it's
Yeah.
already in your policy
Yep.
that you have
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
ability.
I mean, I'd
Yeah.
be willing to move it forward, recommend if we have the changes that we discussed.
So do you wanna change 2 to 4?
Yeah.
I'd like
With
to.
no more than one in a
Yep.
month by an
No more than one, yep.
organization?
Yep,
For-profit, non-profit,
yep.
Correct.
anything.
And you're gonna change the wording on
Markets.
markets.
Yes, I've got
Yeah.
that.
Do you need a motion for that?
Yeah, I made a motion.
Oh,
Well,
second.
I have it on the council agenda as a first, but this can't be a first reading, cause it's not what we got here.
Finished.
So the first reading would have to be at the next council meeting based on these changes.
I won't be there, so what do you guys want to talk about?
I think we're just gonna do it.
If we
at
don't
council
have,
level.
it'll go
Okay.
directly to the council if that's what you
Yeah.
decide to do.
Perfect. All in favor? He motioned, you second, right? Anything else?
Motion
No?
adjourned. Second.
Excuse me.
All in favor?